Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I am going to be taking a look at Free League's dark and gritty fantasy game, Forbidden Lands. Let's roll it. So before I get started, I do want to thank all of my patrons. Your patronage makes so much possible on this channel, and I am very grateful for all of you. If you would like to join my Patreon community, you can do so by following the link in the description below. You'll get some previews of articles or videos that I am working on, occasional comics that I draw, and eventually some adventures that I've created as well. I would love to have you on it. And if you can't afford to join another Patreon right now because you're supporting other creators, that's also fine. If you consider liking and subscribing to this channel, it really does help a lot. And if you're in the mood for some cool t-shirts, I've got stuff that's available over on my DM Tales store on Teespring. I'll also put a link to that in the description below as well. Let's get to the review. So I got Forbidden Lands back for Christmas in December of 2022. I actually had to go back and think about it. And I read it last year, but have not been able to get it on the channel. So many things just jumped ahead of it. Finally, this spring, I decided that I was just going to dive back into it again, reread the core rulebooks. I've run a session of it now, and there's a lot to love about Forbidden Lands. Let's take a look. My description of Forbidden Lands, the setting is basically take the Silmarillion and remove more of the hope, and that's really what you get. The game itself is set 10 generations after a series of catastrophic wars and betrayals devastated society, and in the intervening time, this thing called the Blood Mist caused the death of anyone who was called away from their homes when darkness fell. And this made the world rather small because you could only travel as far away from home as you could get back before dark. Otherwise, you would just die. However, in the intervening years, just before the game begins, the blood mist has lifted and there is able to be exploration and travel inside the world of Forbidden Lands once again. That is essentially where the world begins, and that is how the players enter into the game setting. Now, Forbidden Lands uses Free League's Year Zero engine. That's a dice pool system, and players are recommended to have between 10 and 15 six-sided dice in 3 distinct colors. Now, the game also requires players to have one 8-sided die, a D8, one 10-sided die, D10, and one 12-sided die, a D12 as well. These other dice come into play as players find cool artifacts or increase their ranks for different talents. We'll talk about those in a bit. The different color D6s represent the 3 different wells from which dice pools are drawn. First is your base dice. These correspond to one of the 4 attributes the characters have in the game. That's strength, agility, wits, and empathy. And then you have skill dice, which represent one of the 16 different skills in the game. Each skill is also linked to one of the 4 attributes, and on the character sheet, this is a really nice touch, they are organized that way so that you can see what attribute is linked to this skill right away, and that is very cool. The third pool is gear dice. These come into play when characters use a tool for a particular role. You form a dice pool by combining the number of base dice and skill dice for an applicable skill that apply to the attempt being made. And then if you are using a tool in order to complete this task, you are going to add the number of gear dice that's equal to the gear's bonus into that dice pool system. If a character has no dice in the skill, they still may make an attempt using it, but they're only going to use base dice to do so. So you're still allowed to do everything, but you're going to be limited by the amount of dice you roll for this attempt. Forbidden Lands will also sometimes indicate modifiers for a roll, like +1 or +2. This indicates the number of extra dice that the player adds to the pool. So it's not adding to the value, it's adding to the number of skilled dice that you're going to be rolling. Gives you more of a chance to succeed. Once the pool is formed, player rolls all those dice, and if there are any 6s in the attempt, it is successful. Additional 6s are going to add an additional benefit that's set by each skill that's being used, Or, say in a combat situation, they're going to inflict more damage in combat. If no sixes are rolled, then the attempt fails and some narrative consequence must occur. There is always going to be something that happens whenever dice are rolled in this game. You're not going to be sitting outside waiting for the door to magically open on its own. However, if you get to a failure, players might be feeling desperate and decide to push their roll. If they do this, they're going to take every 6 and every 1, excluding base dice, because base dice for ones never count. So every 6 is going to count for all the dice, but the ones are only going to count from the gear dice and the base dice. The rest of the dice are then re-rolled, additional 6s are added to the impact of the attempt, and any 1s from both rolls, suddenly they become activated. For every 1 that is rolled on a base die, the character takes 1 point of damage to the attribute that was used in that attempt. So if you were using strength in order to do an attack, suddenly you're going to take that much damage back upon you because you've pushed yourself past your limits to do it. This reduces the number of base dice that you can use in future attempts until the character has a chance to heal. So I enjoy the fact that it shows that taking damage, being hurt, is a progressive impact on the character. And should a character's attribute pool ever be reduced to 0, they become broken. Now, this is going to always prevent the character from immediately continuing with the adventure right away, but it's particularly dangerous when strength or wits is involved because it triggers a critical injury, which has a long-term impact on the character. This can include death, by the way. Any sort of damage in Forbidden Lands is consequential, so players are going to have to learn to avoid being hurt at all if possible. Because if you go around just whacking things with sword, eventually you're going to break sooner rather than later, and that's going to hurt. Now, likewise, when you push a roll, every 1 on a gear dice is also going to reduce that gear's bonus by 1 point. And when a gear's bonus reaches 0, it is damaged and will need to be repaired before it can be used again. This makes pushing a roll in combat even more strenuous or stressful because when you push your roll for your sword, if you take that much damage to it, suddenly you've lost your weapon in the middle of combat, and that could make things very, very bad for you. At the same time, 1s are not all negative because each 1 rolled on the base dice when you push a roll, that's going to grant the character 1 willpower point. And these are the points that characters need to use in order to activate their special abilities. These are called talents in the game. That includes spells, by the way. So accumulating willpower points through pushing rolls, that's going to be something that you might be interested in doing. Forbidden Lands initiative is card-based. Cards from 1 to 10 are set in a deck. An ace is considered 1, then they are dealt to the players, and engaged characters are going to act in ascending order. However, unlike Dragonbane, which uses a similar concept, initiative is not drawn each round of combat. Although if players want to trade cards with each other at the beginning of every round, they are free to do so. Characters may take 1 slow and 1 fast action, or 2 fast actions each round of combat. Attacks are all considered slow actions, and weapons also have features like pointed and blunt, which indicates the types of attacks they may make, like bludgeon or slash or stab. The different types of attacks impact the way targets may attempt to avoid damage anytime they are hit by a weapon. We'll more on that in a bit. As with all checks, any attack on an adversary is successful when a single 1 is shown on the dice. Weapons inflict a set amount of damage when they hit, but every additional 6 is going to increase the damage inflicted by 1 point. Damage is going to typically be taken from strength, although certain types of attacks may impact other attributes as well. Forbidden Lands uses a zoned combat scheme, so you have arm's length, which means the character is currently in immediate melee range. Near means the character is a few steps away from the adversary. Short indicates the character is up to 25 meters away. The last range for combat, long, is any character up to 100 meters away from the target. Normal movement in the game is a fast action that's called a run. This allows a character to move 1 zone inside combat. This does not require a roll unless the character is moving over difficult terrain, in which case it will have some type of roll needing to be made in order to do it successfully. But because it is a fast action, a character may move and attack in the same turn if they want. There are 2 defensive actions in the game, parry and dodge. These are called fast actions as well. Each is effective against all different attacks, but are more effective against certain types of attacks. And because these are actions that a character makes, they can also be pushed. So if you're desperate to avoid damage, you can push your roll in order to do so. Dodging grants a +2 bonus against slash attacks and requires a move roll. Every 6 reduces incoming damage by 1 point, but also results in the character being prone unless the player decides to make that attempt with a -2 penalty and roll 2 less dice. So there's a struggle as to whether or not you want to stay on your feet at this point. Parrying grants a +2 against stab attacks, but the character must also be wielding a weapon which has the parrying feature. Like with dodging, every 6 rolled reduces the incoming damage by 1 point. Armor in Forbidden Lands has a rating, which is the number of dice rolled to mitigate the incoming damage when you take a hit. Every 6 rolled reduces damage by 1 point. But if a character takes any damage from a blow, every 1 in that armor roll is going to reduce the armor's rating by 1. So when an armor's rating reaches 0, just like with all gear, the armor is going to be broken and will need to be repaired before it can offer any sort of protection again. Also, because armor rolls are not actions, they cannot be pushed. I like this setting for defense. It's not an all or nothing approach, but if you roll really poorly, even though you're trying to dodge, you can still get smacked. It's pretty cool. I think that combat is set up great for theater of the mind scenarios, but the action economy in it still leaves room for a lot of tactical decision making. I'm going to move here. Am I going to save my slow action so I can take a fast action and dodge or parry next turn and then attack the next turn? Or do I just go for broke right now? It's kind of an interesting setup. I do like it. Characters in Forbidden Lands can be one of 8 distinct kin. That's human, elf, dwarf, half-elf, orc, wolfkin, goblin, or halfling. Each kin has their own motivations and lore, which makes them alien to the others, and each also possesses a specific kin talent. It's a really nice setup. There are also 8 professions in Forbidden Lands with some typical tropes like hunter, fighter, and minstrel, and these offer a nice variety of approaches to the game. There are only 2 professions in the game which can cast spells. Those are the nature magic wielding druids and the arcane force wielding sorcerers. Professions each have a starting list of skills, each of which may have up to 3 dice assigned to them. The other skills may only have 1 die assigned to them during character creation, so it's showing what your profession tends to be better at. The number of skill points a starting character has is determined by their age, which is actually picked by the player. As characters advance, they can increase their talent's rank or learn new skills or improve their existing skills. This opens up new aspects of play and new ways to use their talents as they move forward. Experience points are actually earned after each session by answering a list of questions that's found on page 39 of the player's handbook. Every time you answer yes, you earn 1 experience point, although the GM is the final arbiter as to whether or not an experience point is actually warranted in that situation. So experience points are also not cumulative. Instead, they are spent in order to increase rank in or learn new spells and talents, as I pointed out above. Characters can only increase these by 1 rank at a time, so you can't hoard your experience points and jump 3 ranks in a talent or get a new skill that has 3 dice put into it right away. Only 1 at a time. Druids and sorcerers gain casting through their profession talents. Each talent is a distinct discipline. There are 3 for druids and 4 for sorcerers, and each discipline has a number of spells assigned in ranks leveled 1 through 3. When a caster attains the corresponding profession talent, they may cast all spells in that discipline up to their current rank. So there's no list of memorized or having spells in your spell book. Every spell that's part of your rank, you're able to cast. And in addition to the specialized spells, there's also a list of general spells which any caster may invoke. Forbidden Lands does not limit casting through spell slots either. If a caster has any willpower points at all, they may cast a spell. And any additional willpower points can be spent to increase the spell's power level. And when a spell is cast, the player does have to roll a number of dice equal to the amount of willpower points spent. But the spell itself is automatic. It happens no matter what. The die roll is only used to determine potential side effects. See, every 6 you roll on that spellcasting roll overcharges the spell by 1. This is going to increase the impact of the spell as described in the spell's description. Oftentimes it's going to be more damage inflicted. Even a single 1, however, triggers a mishap, and this is determined by a D66 table in the player's handbook. It's found on page 119. Mishaps can range from everything to an altered appearance all the way up to the character being dragged into another dimension and being removed from the game. At least as a player character, they may return later as an NPC but be changed somehow. So casting is risky, but there is a way to mitigate the danger, because as a character advances in their magical talents, they may roll 1 die less than is required to cast the spell. If this reduces the number to 0, then no roll needs to be made because spells happen automatically. So if you have a rank 2 caster, for example, they can spend a single willpower point and cast any rank 1 spell for their discipline with no risk to themselves at all. This is called safe casting. It's an interesting take on things. Forbidden Lands comes as a box set which contains 2 stunning stitched-bound hardback books, each of which has a book ribbon. In fact, my love of book ribbons in TTRPG books probably begins with Forbidden Lands, because once I saw it, I did not want to go back. The physical books are G5 format, that is 6.69 by 9.45 inches. It is in between digest size A5 books and what many Americans consider to be full-sized books at 8.5 by 11 inches. I appreciate the format. The books are really easy to lug around, but they're large enough that the interior pages do not feel cramped. These 2 books, a player's handbook and a game master's guide, have faux leather covers which are stamped with gold foil for decoration. Looks really cool. On the interior cover pages, both front and back, there is a map of the default setting, the Ravenlands, that is drawn in old school line art, which is stunning and sets the tone for the books. It's also printed on flat paper, which is just better, and it makes readability so much easier, and the interior art pop. Now, the box itself is thick cardboard displaying a menacing piece of artwork which conveys both the game's danger and wonder on the cover. The main subject seems to dare the party to continue forward, while off in the distance are the hints of ruins that can just barely be seen. It is one of the coolest covers that I have ever seen on a TTRPG book. I do have to say, however, that the box itself is light on overall content. It has the 2 aforementioned hardback books, a beautiful color map of the Forbidden Lands, some stickers which can keep track of a party's travels because they're going to go out and discover where different ruins are, and then a 40-page booklet containing some more player and GM options, and well, that's it. Since Forbidden Lands offers special dice to help speed up gameplay, I think that would have been nice to have in the set, although I must admit the quality of the 2 main books may have made including dice cost prohibitive, so there's a trade-off there. The included full-color map, though, that might be the star of the show. It's double-sided, so a GM could use it to track 2 separate campaigns with the included stickers. And I'll tell you what, if I had space to hang it on my wall, it would be up there already, framed and shining out for all to see in all of its beauty. It is that pretty. My only real complaint about the box set is the included booklet, and that's not because it's bad stuff in there, it's just because I don't see any reason that this information wasn't already included in the core rulebooks to begin with. It feels more like an errata of things missed, where someone said, oh, gee, we have to fix that right now, more than a planned inclusion. I really would have liked to see that material just put into the core rulebooks. Forbidden Lands body text is a classic serif font, which is easy to read. Headings utilize the same exact font enlarged according to their level in all capital letters. It's simple, it's clean, and it gets the job done. There are 3 heading levels in the game, but only 2 of them are separated from the main text. A third appears in line, written in all capital letters, and then separated from the body text by a colon. Again, it's functional. This is actually a style that was used back in the days of early AD&D. The Player's Handbook has it, for example. It works. It seems a little bit dated at this point, but it still does work, and it does save some space inside the book itself. Interior decorations, they're beautiful. Chapter title pages display the chapter title, obviously. Inside, a stunning hand-drawn border which conveys the game world's danger. And then the first paragraph of every chapter uses a drop cap, which is adorned with an ink drawing of a raven, which harkens back to the name of the Forbidden Lands, the Ravenlands. Headers in the book, they only, and I put that in quotes, display a stylized thick artwork border. And then you have all information put into the footer. The current page number is there, centered on the page, inside an inked skull. And then you have on the left page the chapter number and then the chapter title written on the right page. Each of these is underneath the skull and bordered by a hand-drawn line above and below. It's simple and gets to the point and works really well. Tables and callouts are surrounded by a ripped parchment border, and callouts also get an additional hand-drawn border at the top. Looks beautiful. Tables utilize an alternating row color scheme, just gray and no color at all, and the column titles are displayed in bold text. It makes it very easy to read. Both elements also actually use a sans serif font, which further differentiates itself from the body text. It's a nice setup to make these things stand out. The artwork of the books are stark and beautiful. It's all lined ink, which conveys both menace and danger. It is the perfect complement for the game's aesthetic. I love it. One of my favorite pieces is the sea serpent that you can find on page 116 of the Game Master's Guide. But all the images depicting magic, they capture how dangerous it is to wield that power inside this world. It's really cool. Overall, the game design feels like it is a love letter to old school games, and I appreciate it. Forbidden Lands has intrigued me. It really has. And after creating some characters and then running a session, my interest in it has only increased. It was fun. I do appreciate the different character options and kin types, as well as the effort that went into making each of the kin distinct from the others. They're not just different sized humans with pointy ears or not pointy ears or beards or no beards. They are distinct from each other. I had worried in my written review that the number of combat roles might have been overwhelming, especially for new players, but after running a session of the game, they feel much faster than I was expecting, and they also feel very, very fun. And combat itself was a blast. So bring on all those dice rolls. I really liked it. Casting in the game is interesting. I do enjoy the lack of spell slots and the roll to see if something overcharges or causes a mishap, but I do find that tying the accumulation of willpower points to push rolls handcuffs casters at the beginning of an adventure. Now, in one way, this does tie in well with the magic is unreliable and this is a low magic game, so I do get that. But it does reduce the uniqueness of these professions early on, and it's something that I'm still pondering whether I like or not. So if you'd like to pick up Forbidden Lands for yourself, you can pick it up as a core box set through Free League's website for $59.93, at least as of this recording. The PDFs right now are only $12.99 through DriveThruRPG. They are normally $24.99, so if they're still on sale, that is an amazing deal. If you are into gritty fantasy role-playing games, this game is one that is worth checking out. So coming up on the channel, I still got a lot in the queue. I am reading Household. It's just taking me a long time to get through it because life has happened. It's June, which is busy when you have kids that are in school, but I do love this game and I can't wait to get it onto the channel for you all to see. I've also got in the Easy D6 version of Grimwood City that has just come out by my friend Dave Ward. I want to get that on the channel as soon as possible. I might start reading that and get it up really quick because it's a cool setting for a really simple game. It's worth checking out. And also, Dave's going to be having his Kickstarter for his own system that's going to launch in September, I believe. So I want to get this to the channel before that actually happens. I do want to start reading Heckin' Good Doggos. I think I'm going to bring that on vacation with me. I've also got the core rulebook for Dragonbane, which I ordered because I love this game so much. That's sitting on my shelf right now, but I do want to do a first look of this game because Dragonbane core rulebook printed on plain paper. Oh yes, this needs to be looked at. It's really, really cool. Still want to do Raccoon Sky Pirates. I do have an Age of Empire box set to test out the new Star Wars games that's there, so I'm going to check that out as well, and a couple other books that I want to read and review. Also, a lot of cool stuff going on, and I am enjoying all of it. So keep a lookout for some really cool videos. I got reviews, thoughts, and other reflections that are coming up. This should be a lot of fun. Want to continue with the journey? Go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment below. It would really help me out, and I would love to know what you think of all these games. Until we see each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.